What is up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers. These are my Draftkings MMA picks for UFC Vegas 94. We have Virna Jandiroba going against Amanda Lemos. And yeah, honestly, it's a pretty tricky card from a DraftKings perspective, I'd say. We have a lot of fights that could really go either way. I think we have maybe one favorite that is minus 200 or greater, and that's Miranda Maverick. So yeah, a lot of pick'em fights. I think you can make a case for, honestly, pretty much every single dog. So I think it's one of those weeks where the optimal lineup may have like a lot of salary left on the table, but gonna break it all down before we do. So if you guys could please do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you guys want more content, check out dfsbythenumbers.com. Do you want to shout out Daily Grind Fantasy? This video is brought to you by Daily Grind Fantasy. They take lines from the sports books and give you the most plus EV plays on PrizePicks, Underdog, and many other daily fantasy sites. Use promo code DFSBTN and get 25% off your first month. The link is in the description for that. But with all that out of the way, guys, I say we get right into it. We're going to go with the fight. Doesn't go to decision lines here. And this is a card where I think we're going to have like a million decisions. I think a lot of these fights are going the distance. But you know, here I think 3 of these 4 do finish inside the distance, but we'll talk about it. Up top, the big one here, it's Steve Garcia going against Sung Woo Choi, a fight that I absolutely do think finishes inside the distance. I think these guys are going to stand and bang. 20 knockdowns between the two in their UFC fights. I think somebody's getting served here. I personally lean towards the Steve Garcia side, but one of these guys I think is getting knocked out and getting knocked out in very brutal fashion. I think there's multiple knockdown upsides here. So yeah, this is a fight that is must target for me. I think this fight's finishing. One of the few fights I think is finishing this week. Next, we got the main event, Virna Jandiroba going against Amanda Lemos, another borderline must-target fight, a fight that I do think finishes inside the distance. We have 25 minutes to work with, and stylistically, we have a striker versus grappler matchup where, of course, on the feet, you have to absolutely favor Amanda Lemos, who hits like a truck for the division, and then on the ground, you have Virna Jandiroba, who can get takedowns, get control time, and possibly a submission as well. I personally lean towards the underdog in Amanda Lemos here in this fight, but you can make cases for both fighters, and I think the winner has a really good chance to find her way onto the optimal lineup at these very playable salaries. Next, we have really fun fight here on the main card. We got Krzyzewski going against Kurt Holobaugh. And yeah, this is a fight that I do think probably does finish inside the distance. If we take a look at their finishing rates, Krzyzewski with a 87% finishing rate, Kurt Holobaugh with an 85% finishing rate. Krzyzewski has been finished in both of his losses. Kurt Holobaugh has been finished in 2 of his 8 losses. I think somebody's probably getting served here. It's definitely a hefty price tag to pay for Krzyzewski here at 8,700. I'm personally actually leaning the underdog in Kurt Holobaugh, especially on DraftKings, especially at this massive price savings. But like I said, I think this is one of the very few fights on this card that is going to end inside the distance. And then lastly, we got Cody Gibson going against Brian Kelleher, minus 145 for the fight. Doesn't go to decision. I actually think there is a good chance this fight does go to decision here, but at the same time, like, there could be finishing upside for both fighters to win by submission, maybe. Cody Gibson's been submitted 4 times in his career. Brian Kelleher's been submitted 8 times in his career, so maybe I could see a sub between the two. This is a very sketchy fight, in my opinion. Cody Gibson at 9,300 is just insane, but at the same time, it's hard to have much confidence at all in Brian Kelleher. This would be like a Kelleher spot for me, like 6,900. He's extremely cheap. I just think he's more than on his way out here, so it's a really sketchy fight. I'm not sure I'm going to get to this one in a ton of lineups this week. Let's move on to the core plays here. Miranda Maverick, 9,200. She's the biggest favorite on the card this week, and there are not a ton of fighters that I feel like confident in this week, but Miranda Maverick, I guess, would be my most confident pick, which is not saying a ton at all because I'm not extremely confident in her, but I think, you know, this is a good matchup for her in a sense that Barbosa is coming in here on short notice. I think that's something to absolutely mention. Miranda Maverick is going to have the cardio advantage here. We saw Barbosa slow down in her last fight after the first 6.5, 7.5 minutes, and now she's coming in here on short notice. I think Barbosa may have some success early, but as the fight goes on, I do think it's going to favor Miranda Maverick here. I think she can get takedowns down the stretch. I think a late finish could be in play as well for Maverick. So, yeah, don't mind some Miranda Maverick at 9,200. Steve Garcia, a fight that we talked about a little bit, a fight that I think is going to be, you know, borderline. It's got to be must target. I mean, these guys are going to stand and bang. Both guys have no strike and defense. Both guys have no durability. But I do like that Steve Garcia side. This is a guy in Steve Garcia who we've seen dropped a ton, but eventually find the chin of his opponent in his own right. Like, there's a really good chance Steve Garcia gets dropped here at least once. but I think he'll get back up and get the knockout himself. So I like Steve Garcia, but a fight I'm going to be very, very heavily invested in this week. Next, we got Amanda Lemos, 7,700. I like Lemos here in the main event. It's very closely lined. It is approaching a pick'em by the looks of it. I think right now, like, Verna's minus 130 or so. Lemos is plus 110. I think it should be a pick'em. Like, you can make a strong case for both sides. With Verna, you have the wrestling, the grappling upside. With Amanda Lemos, you have the crazy power. I think on the feet, it's one-way traffic, whereas on the mat, you know, you got to absolutely favor Verna, but we've seen Lemos survive on the mat with Mackenzie Dern and Zhang Wei Li for 25 minutes as well. So I just think when this fight's on the feet, Lemos is going to have multiple opportunities to take Verna's head off here. We got Bill Algeo, 8,900. Bill Algeo coming off of a very, very disappointing loss to Kyle Nelson, but I think this is a solid get-right spot for Algeo here. I give Algeo just a ton of advantages here. Doo Ho Choi's not won a fight in, I think, like 8 years. Like, it's been a very long time. Algeo's the more active fighter. I think Algeo is definitely higher volume in this matchup. I think Algeo has the grappling upside in this matchup. You have to give Doo Ho Choi the power, but, you know, typically Algeo, outside of his last fight against Kyle Nelson, Algeo is very, very durable. So I think as long as Algeo's chin is not completely gone, which I don't think it is, I think Algeo should cruise here and put up a decent score along the way at 8,900. Another guy I do feel pretty good about in terms of getting a win. Next, we got the GPP plays here. We got Jung Young Lee, 9,100. This is going to probably be one of the most exciting fights on this card. This is going to be an absolute car crash, you got to think. I think Haider Emil is just a guy that is going to bring that car crash style, and I think that could potentially lead to his detriment here. Haider Emil is going to go out there and he's going to put himself into, I think, some tough spots here on the feet. He's going to eat one to give one, and doing that against Jung Young Lee I don't think is the best choice here. Like, you look at Jung Young Lee thus far in his UFC career, he hasn't scored amazing on Draftkings yet, but in the Za fight, Za tried to hump his leg for 15 minutes, and then in the Bilder fight, Bilder was terrified to do anything for 15 minutes, whereas Emil, I think, is going to put himself into the fire, and I think that could lead to Emil potentially getting finished here. So I like Jung Young Lee as a tournament play at 9,100. Verna Jandiroba, although I'm on the Lemos side, we cannot ignore Verna. She's a very good play. 25 minutes to work with. Lemos, her takedown defense isn't great. We've seen her taken down. We've seen her get held down. We've seen her get subbed. We saw Jessica Andrade sub her in the very first round. So yeah, I'd be lying if I said Verna doesn't absolutely have a path here. I think somebody's probably getting finished, whether it's a Verna sub or whether it's a Lemos KO. So yeah, Verna is absolutely in play at 8,500. Kanan Krachewski, 8,700. Another fight that I do think, like I said, could finish inside the distance here. He's a little bit too expensive for my liking, but this is a guy that can grapple. We just saw Kurt Hollaball, get taken down and held down by Trey Ogden for 15 minutes. I thought that was a terrible look. Krachewski has some power as well on the feet, so yeah, I don't mind Kanan Krachewski here at 8,700. Cody Durden, 8,300. This is another fight that I think is a really, really good fight to target here. You take a look at Cody Durden. When he's winning fights, he's scoring incredibly on DraftKings. Like, if Cody Durden wins this fight at 8,300, I truly believe he has 100 point upside. I think it could be even like one of the highest scorers on the slate, just because this is a guy in Cody Durden who his path to victory is going to be to wrestle, wrestle, wrestle. He's landing 5 takedowns per 15 minutes. He's going against Bruno Silva, who can be taken down. The one thing I don't like about Cody Durden is he has been finished quite a bit, and I think all the finishing upside for the most part is on the Bruno Silva side. So if this goes to decision, I think it means that Cody Durden was able to win this fight and puts up a really big score along the way. But yeah, great fight to target here, that Cody Durden-Bruno Silva fight. Live Dog, speaking of Bruno Silva, 7,900. I'm personally picking Bruno Silva to win this fight. I think it's a minute winner versus moment winner type fight. Durden's going to be able to get the takedowns, the control time, whereas Bruno Silva, he has a ton of power on the feet. I think he's going to be landing the much bigger shots. I think if there's a knockout on the feet, it's coming from the Bruno Silva side. And then he's a black belt in BJJ, which, grappling has given Cody Durden problems in a lot of his fights. He's been submitted 4 times, Cody Durden, almost 5 if you... in the Hadley fight, he was close to getting subbed there as well. So I think if there's a finish in this fight, it's on the Bruno Silva side. Could be a sub, could be a knockout, but I think a finish could be in play here. Sung Woo Choi, 7,600. This is a like I said, this is my favorite fight on the card to target from a DraftKings perspective. Choi, I think he's very hittable, but so is Steve Garcia. Choi, I think, is very chinny, but I also think Steve Garcia is pretty chinny. I just think somebody's getting flatlined here. I think somebody's getting dropped. Sungwoo Choi, if he's winning this fight, I think it's a knockout. One of the better fights on the card to target. Kurt Holloway, 7,500. Yeah, I don't mind Holloway here. He's going against Kaczewski, who's been finishing all of his losses there. Kurt Holloway, what is he, like 37 years old at this point? He's, 37 years old at this point. I don't like that, but on the feet, he throws with very bad intentions. I could see a Kurt Holloway knockout. Kurt Holloway also has a really good submission game as well. He's dangerous. He's a dangerous guy. He's going against a guy that's been finishing all of his losses, and he's very cheap here, 7,500. I think this fight's a lot closer than these salaries do indicate, so I like Kurt Holloway. I think he's a very live dog this week. And then Thomas Peterson, 7,400. I think Peterson is certainly in play. It's hard to ignore a guy with a 100% finish rate. Believe it or not, this fight is like minus 200 and something to go the distance, which I think it probably does. But if there is a finish in this Peterson-Usman fight, you got to think it's coming from the Peterson side. I think Peterson has the grappling, the wrestling upside in this matchup, and he's 7,400. I think this fight should be a coin flip. I don't understand why Muhammad Usman's 8,800 and Peterson's this cheap, so I think Peterson's a live dog, and I would much, much, much rather play him than Muhammad Usman at 8,800. Moving on to the Prize Picks Play of the Week, and we're going to go with the Jung Young Park more than 67.5 significant strikes. And yeah, I think this is a fight that's going to take place standing for all 15 minutes. Brad Tavares has elite takedown defense, some of the best takedown defense I think I've ever seen in my entire life. So yeah, I don't think Jung Young Park is taking down Brad Tavares. And then on top of that, Jung Young Park is not a knockout threat. I think Park has, I don't think he has, maybe one knockdown in the UFC, maybe one. Other than that, he's not really a power threat. He's a volume guy. I think this fight's going 15 minutes, so I think that volume is going to add up across 15 minutes. Give me Jung Young Park to get more than 67.5 significant strikes. If you guys want to check that out on Prize Picks, use promo code DFSBTN, and you'll get a 100% deposit match up to $100. Pump play, Haider Emil, 7,100. This is a guy that, win or lose, he's going to fight for your money. Win or lose, he's going to produce a car crash. Win or lose, it's going to be a very exciting fight. Like, if Haider Emil wins this fight, he's going to break the slate. He's going to put up a massive score. He's reckless, but he's throwing a ton of volume. He's pushing a crazy pace that even he can't keep up with. I think Haider Emil is a pump play that should be sprinkled a little bit this week. I don't think there's a ton of pump plays I love down low, but Haider Emil would be one of those guys that I just think has a ton of upside in a win. And then fade is going to be Muhammad Usman, 8,800. Pretty easy fade here. He does nothing. On the feed, he does nothing. He throws no volume. Has some power, I suppose. And then in terms of the wrestling, he can wrestle in some fights, but I don't think he's going to be able to wrestle here against Thomas Peterson. I think this should be an 8,200, 8,000 matchup, and there's no way I can get to Muhammad Usman at 8,800. So pretty easy fade here for me on Muhammad Usman. But yeah, there you guys have it. Those are the DraftKings MMA picks for UFC Vegas 94. It's a weird, very tough, in my opinion, card from a DraftKings perspective. I feel like, a lot of these underdogs are very live, a lot of them, and a lot of these fights can go either way. So it might be a good week to maybe get different, leave some salary on the table. So yeah, looking forward to it as always. If you guys could, like on your way out, subscribe on your way out, check out DFSbythenumbers.com, and best of luck for UFC Vegas 94. See you guys later.